Hello, everyone. We're going to do a few more paragraphs from our book on the century, and we will be concluding the introduction portion of the book today. I hope you enjoy the content, and certainly this material is beneficial in your efforts to reduce your accent and speak more like a native English speaker. All right, well, the book says, while traditionally organized, that is, in a chronological sequence, our history is meant to be read not as an exhaustive study as one might find, say, in an encyclopedia, or even in a dutifully thorough one as could be discovered perhaps in a textbook, but rather as a selective look at the past 100 years, a series of story-filled essays that, together, we feel offer a coherent picture of a remarkable time. There are many important stories we do not cover in detail. The massacre of more than 1 million Armenians in 1915, the genocidal crimes of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia in the 1970s and 80s, and the occupation of Wounded Knee, South Dakota, by Native American activists in 1973, to mention only three. But we ask you not to look upon this book as a reference, to be pulled from the shelf to answer the nagging trivia question. Instead, read it like a novel. Peruse its pictures as if you were walking through a well-curated gallery show, and glance at the first-person testimonies as if you were culling the diary of a beloved ancestor. The century is there. Even the events of the century that lie beyond the life experience of its authors are never further away than the memories of a grandparent. As an enthusiastic enlistee in the First World War, Peter's own grandfather was among the first casualties in the gassings that surprised the Canadian soldiers on the Western Front in 1915. And the fact that he refused to speak of his experience filled his grandson with a sense of awe. Even today, pictures of that grandfather in uniform sit to the side of Peter's desk. Todd's uncle, barely 2 years old, was a fatal victim of the 1918 flu epidemic, the worst in history. And Todd's maternal grandparents were traveling performers in the vaudeville circuit of the 1910s, whose careers were soon displaced by the popular preference for that newest of entertainments, the movies. Peter's father, Charles Jennings, was among the pioneers of radio news in Canada. And Peter still remembers the challenge he brought to a budding television newsman, unsure of the power of words. "Describe the sky," he said to his son. And after Peter complied, he sent him out to observe one more time. "Now go out and slice it into pieces and describe each piece as different from the next." Todd grew up hearing his own father's stories of a Great Depression childhood, when Ralph Brewster would watch a lonely drifter chalk the sidewalk outside the family home in New Jersey. We can thank them for our modern historical consciousness, for one of the byproducts of the inventive genius of the 20th century is that we possess a more dynamic archive of life in this time. Sound, picture, moving picture, video, and of course, artifact. that can be assembled for any time previous. And not just a public archive, but a private archive too. As anyone with a camcorder and an attic filled with 8mm films of birthdays and graduations and babies' first steps can attest. It may not always seem so, but thanks to all of these, we are the most historically aware population in the history of the world. In recent years, a popular historical exercise has been to ask a simple question: what if? It is a natural query for an age when computer programs allow readers to make plot choices in novels as they read, and when, thanks to the internet, virtual realities abound. But as you read through this book, you too may be tempted to wonder what your world would be like had some of its critical turns been reversed. What if the soldiers of Operation Overlord had not met success on the beaches of Normandy in 1944? What if the Manhattan Project's diligent physicists, many of them racked by guilt over their mission, had failed to beat the Germans to the atomic secret that would end the war in the image of a mushroom cloud in 1945? And yet, when considering the 20th century, what if is a question that brings as much lament as gratitude. For it is just as valid to ask, what if those foolish men who set the globe on its course toward the misery of World War I had chosen a more prudent and peaceful method for working out their differences? Might the Russians have never responded to the pleas of a long-exiled revolutionary whose dreams of a workers' state hung like a dark cloud? Might the German state have evolved more quickly into a respectable democracy instead of the fragile Weimar Republic, whose failure encouraged Berliners to listen seriously to the delusional rantings of a madman? Alas, unlike a computer novel, history does not reveal its alternatives. For better and worse, the story of the 20th century, our story, and your story, is what you hold here. A noisy human carnival throbbing with scenes both spectacular and outrageous, tawdry and radiant, reckless and heroic. All right, well, that's where we're going to stop in our reading for today. The introduction to this publication is now over. We did not read the whole introduction, but just several paragraphs from it. And we will now start the main portion of the book in our next video. I hope you will be there to listen to the reading. All right, well, I'll see everyone in that video.